Today, me and Tuck are going to show you how to trick tomatoes to produce more fruit and less leaves. Let's go! Me and Tuck have been growing tomatoes for over 12 years now. Throughout that time, we have developed a few interesting ways of forcing our tomato plants to focus their attention on the production of lots of fruit that ripen early, grow huge, and continue to produce late in the season. Here is an indeterminate tomato plant. It grows like a vine, similar to a cucumber. This will continue to grow and produce all season until either a disease or a frost kills it. If I didn't tie and stake this tomato plant, it would sprawl along the ground and get bushy. This is another indeterminate tomato plant. This one I didn't stake up. You'll notice this thing has a lot of tops or growth points on it. So originally, the first top was this one. A top is like where the leaves unfold from. So the leaves will unfold and it'll continue to grow from here. And then if you look this way over here, here's another top. It's shot out and the leaves are unfolding. So everywhere on tomato plants where a leaf meets the stem, you're going to have this top grow. This is what we call suckers on tomato plants. And this sucker will grow in the same way a whole tomato plant will. So it's almost like there's a tomato plant growing out of the plant you're already growing. See if you notice this right here. This thing is gonna grow just like a regular tomato plant would. And then between each, in the crotch right here, between the stem and the leaf, another sucker will grow, almost like a whole nother tomato plant. At first you would think this is great because that's going to be a lot of fruit. But when it comes to your tomato plants, less leaves and less tops have some major advantages. You will notice I have 20 tomato plants in 20 square feet. When I tie and prune my tomato plants like this, they only take up 1 square foot each because I'm growing them vertically. Also, when I prune my plants, like I'm going to show you how I do it right now, they have less chances of getting disease issues because they have better airflow and better light penetration. Also, the plants have a better, more equal distribution of leaves, fruits, and roots, which leads to healthier, more productive plants. Let me show you how I prune my tomato plants. We're going to start with the most basic version. Then after you know the basic version, I'll teach you how to break the rules and get into a more advanced form of pruning your tomato plants. This tomato, you'll notice at the top, has one top unfolding. This is forming that whole main stem. So the basic version of pruning your tomatoes would be to go around and remove all of these suckers. So the sucker, again, is growing between the leaf and the crotch of the tomato. If we allow it to grow, all of a sudden it would be like, instead of having one main stem, you start having a bunch of different stems because it's like a whole tomato plant growing out of this one. So in the most basic version, we want this to grow up one single stem and have one top. So we'll go through and remove these young suckers. It's best to do it when they're young because it's less stress on the plant and you could just pop it off with your fingers. Even this one is young enough to just pop this off right with our hands. And this one over here, we'll just pop this off just like this. When it comes down to it, a tomato plant that only has one top, when you think about it, it's gonna have way less stress and it can actually produce fruit better, and that fruit will ripen 2 weeks earlier because this plant has a whole root system to just support that one top. So it can focus all of its attention on the production of those tomatoes and also the ripening of those tomatoes, leading to less stress and a healthier plant. As opposed to a tomato plant that we don't prune, like you see here, if we let this thing sprawl, all of a sudden it's gonna start shooting tops out of everywhere. So basically, this tomato plant will have like 20 tops on it. If we let all the suckers grow, it'll almost be like 20 tomato plants being supported by one root system, as opposed to what I have in my trellis, where there's 20 tomato plants that are all supported by their own root system. If we allow this thing to grow all these tops, like I said, end up with about 20 tops, it's gonna be stress on the plant. And also, the tomatoes are gonna ripen much slower because you have like the equivalent of 20 tomato plants being ripened by only one root system. Let me bring you over to my other plants now and show you the more advanced version of how I prune my tomatoes. Me and Tuck grabbed some gear that we're going to be using for pruning our tomatoes. We also want to mention that we have some new gear out on the website. We've got the new merch, the Team Grow merch. This one is really cool. It's got this emblem on the front and the back is awesome. I'll give you a clip of what it looks like. There's all different little features that are hand-drawn and specific to the channel. I think it looks awesome. There's also a version of the shirt where the design is on the front too. But let's get into our pruning. We've also got some isopropyl alcohol here, some 70%. I'm going to use this to clean my pruners between going from one plant to the next. We don't want to be sharing any diseases. So if one of our plants has a disease issue, we don't want to share that with the next one. So we're going to be using some isopropyl alcohol in a sprayer, and then I'm going to spray it on the pruners from when I go from one plant to the next plant. I like these small pruners for when I need to make small cuts, and I have these big pruners for when and if I need to make big cuts. Let's get over to the plants. To start out, we'll start on this plant right here. The first thing we're going to do is remove the lower leaves, and you want to do this for either indeterminate or your determinate bushy varieties. So we want to make sure that we're removing these lower leaves, because the leaves that are low, if they get in contact with the soil, then they could get some disease issues from the soil, and then they could spread that up the plant. So I'm going to go through and remove a lot of these lower leaves. You can see what the plant looks like now. We'll just take off a lot of these leaves, all these down here. This will also help increase the airflow. And I'll cut this one back right here. You can see how much that opened up the plant there. Well, I'll go through and do this with all my plants in this whole entire trellis. The next thing we want to do is, if you're going to grow up a single stem, which you can if you want to, you would go through and remove all these small little suckers. But now we're talking about the more advanced version of pruning. So we're not going to remove every single sucker. What we can do is we can allow some of these suckers, for instance, this one right here, so we'll start with one main stem. You'll see it growing up here. We'll allow some of these suckers to actually fruit and produce flowers, like you'll see right here. After this produces flowers and grows a little bit, I will cut it back after the flowers, and then I will remove all the additional suckers that come off this one sucker. So it's like I'm only allowing this sucker to just produce the flowers and remove everything else from it. This will increase our overall harvest because it will make the plant produce more fruit, which is kind of what we want. Another thing you could do is you could, if you want, allow the plant to produce like 2 main suckers or a few extra suckers, just to help increase production, but also to help shade the plant out, especially if you live in the south. So if you live in the south and the hot sun comes in the summer, you don't want to remove every single sucker, or the plant will be a little bit bare, and then the sun will just beat down on that fruit and cause sun scald. It's basically sunburn on your tomatoes. So you could leave a few suckers in the center to help shade the bottom of the plants. Overall though, the idea is to really have that one main stem to have the plant grow up and remove some of the suckers on the inside. Let me show you how I would remove some bigger suckers. Come over here. Like I talked about earlier, getting the suckers while they're small is the most ideal. But if I was to just say, let me find a good one to cut. If I don't want to cut this one because I want the fruit from it. But if I was to cut like a sucker like you see here, we'll just say, I'll remove the fruit on this one just to show you. If I was to cut this sucker here, I would cut it down right where it meets the stem, right here. And the cool thing about the isopropyl alcohol is it almost cauterizes the wound, and it allows it to heal a lot better. It also, again, prevents diseases from being spread. So this is kind of like a more advanced version of pruning your tomatoes. In its most basic form, leave one top and just continue to tie it up the tomato plant. Also, when the tomato plant continues to grow up, and say you have a spot here, like this is where our first fruit is, right? Let me just clean my pruner so I don't make a mistake. So I'm gonna clean this right here. If I was to prune this tomato plant, I would remove all these lower leaves first. This leaf here, this leaf here, this leaf in the back, and I could even remove this leaf if I want. And we could remove most of the leaves until it gets to the first set of fruit. We don't want to really start removing leaves above this fruit set because we need some of these leaves in order to take in some sun, photosynthesize, and be able to support some of this fruit. When this fruit finishes though, and the tomato continues to grow up and up, and this fruit's done, then we can remove some of these leaves. So it's this whole idea of balancing out the amount of leaves you have with the amount of fruit you have, also balanced with the size of the root system. So that's why you can leave some extra fruit on these plants, because if you're only gonna leave 1 or 2 tops, you have this whole root system to support the plant. So when it comes down to it, this way of pruning tomatoes, it allows them to ripen quick. They get massive, and they also will produce late into the season, because you're going to be avoiding so many disease issues by giving them good airflow, good light, and allowing the plants to have less stress on them, because they're not supporting, like, again, it's not like one root system supporting 20 plants. It's one root system supporting one plant, and with maybe a little extra fruit on it if you go with the advanced form of pruning your tomatoes. Me and Tuck have a few more things we want to share with you as we walk down Tomato Alley. I've got tomatoes growing on both sides, fruit trees in the center with some blueberries, but these tomatoes are going to do fantastic back here. These ones I'm growing up stakes, as you notice. So a couple things I want to mention. First off is, if you haven't pruned your tomatoes before and they're a little further ahead and you need to remove a lot of foliage, just don't do that all at once, or that could stress your tomato plant out a good amount. Do it over a 2-day period or a 3-day period. So with this tomato right here, first I'm gonna remove all these lower leaves after I cleaned my thing. If you had a tomato that was far along like this is how I would do it. I'm gonna remove the sucker and those extra leaves down there, just like this, you'll notice. And then I would take this out as well. And then this one here. That would probably be what I would do for the first day or so, and then let the plant adjust. I also like pruning on a hot day where it's dry, because these are going to be open wounds for a short period of time. Just make sure you don't do it when it's like raining out, because that could just have a bigger chance of letting diseases in. Another thing you could do is, you'll notice this plant, I have 2 main tops on this one instead of just 1 main stem. I'm doing this because I'm growing them up a stake, and these plants have more space. So it's like I'm basically growing 2 tomato plants up a single stake instead of just growing 1 plant. This will increase my overall yield. I don't do this in my tomato trellis area because that stuff is such close quarters. It grows a lot better up a single stem, and then I could do that advanced thing where I showed you, where I'm just like allowing some of the suckers to fruit and then I'm removing everything else. So this tomato plant right here will grow up those 2 stems. It'll do really well, and I won't go back and do any more pruning that's necessary until about a day or 2, because we don't want to overly stress this plant out. Swing to your left really quick. You'll notice the boss is on the peas. He's found the peas. I'm just trying to work over here, and he was working this morning, so he needs a quick snack. What do you think, boy? Want a pea or something, buddy? He likes these yellow ones. They're pretty dang good. Right, boy? Yeah. Spam some hearts down low if you love seeing the young king in the videos. This guy's always out here. He's always working hard, and needs a little pay for all the labor he's putting in. Right, boyo? There are a few additional things me and Tuck want to mention that we know will help with your overall plant health and also the production. The first one is to make sure you top dress with some all-purpose fertilizer. And the addition of something like a bone meal will help too. This is high in phosphorus, which helps the plant in flower production and also fruit production. You want to make sure you're giving it to them when they head into production, because that's when there's a lot of stress on the plant, and we need to support these plants so they can thrive. Another thing is, you want to make sure that you have a thick mulch down around your plants. This will really help retain the moisture, put less stress on the plants, and also it will keep the soil cooler, which is important. You also, when watering, want to make sure that you're only watering the plants at the base. You don't want to spray the plants with water, or that could really just create a scenario where there's a lot of disease. Light and airflow are the enemy of disease. Wet plants, that really brings in a lot of disease and fungal issues. Look at this guy over here, hanging out in the shade. Can't forget to mention him. The last thing I want to mention is you want to focus and be mindful in getting good varieties of tomatoes, and try some hybrids too. This variety right here is one I've always grown. I love it. This is the Soldaki tomato. It's an heirloom variety. It grows well, but you can already see at the bottom there are some little issues it's getting. We'll make sure to remove these so they don't move up the plant. But you want to grow some varieties that have very good disease resistance, like the Mountain Magic tomato or the Lemon Boy. Those things are so resistant, so easy to grow. You don't have to worry about managing disease with them. So just make sure you're growing some hybrid varieties that will continue to produce later in the season. This Soldaki will do good for me, but come like September, even October, some of those super reliable varieties like the Mountain Magic, the Super Sweet 100, the Lemon Boy will continue to produce when the late blight comes. So it's a good idea to get some of the hybrid varieties in the ground. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. Me and Tuck had a blast out here. We hope that you got some value out of this video. And we wanted to try to open your mind to different ways of pruning tomatoes. You can go that basic route like we've showed, but if you can kind of understand the basics like I shared with you, maybe you could kind of break the rules and make the natural growth of the tomato work for you more. Instead of kind of fighting against all the suckers, you could adopt them into your style, and they'll actually help you grow more fruit. Me and Tuck wanted to mention a thank you to one of our new channel members, Elizabeth Berman. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. We also want to mention again to check out the new merch at teamgrow.us. Join the team, be part of the team, and grab your Team Grow shirt. We're really proud of the way that they came out. Let me turn around one more time just to show you guys the back of it. We think they're really cool, and there's so many unique little things specific to the channel, and we're just really happy with how they look, and it's something that we really enjoy. We had a blast. I mean, I know I've showed him a bunch of times, but he deserves all the screen time. He's the leader of the channel. He's the young king. He's the boss. We wouldn't be out here if it wasn't for this guy. He's always encouraging us to get out here, always inspiring us. And me and Tuck hope that between the two of us, we've encouraged and inspired you to get out, get some tomatoes planted, do a little bit of pruning, increase your harvests, so you could be pulling in and eating those fresh tomatoes right off the vine. There's nothing like it. Tuck and James will be back to you again real soon. We out.